Looking for a cosmic adventure like no other? Zatswan Multiversal Guardian is a high-stakes comic book journey through the multiverse with stunning art and an unforgettable hero. Get your copy today in ebook and paperback formats. Link in the description.
Hi everybody, Neil Allen here, the creator of Zatswan, the cosmic fantasy comic series that you can purchase in the link below in the description for only $2.99 on Amazon.com. It's a 130-page cosmic fantasy comic. As I mentioned, it's only $2.99 for the digital version. If you prefer to read in print, there's also a paperback that is available. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's currently free right now. So please check that out, and if you do, leave me a leave me a review. Sorry. Sometimes I do weird things like that when I'm like kind of concentrating on like inking in my artwork. So speaking of Zatswan, I am working on inking in a page of it right now where we have our leads here, Zatswan and who I'm inking in, and Princess Allecka. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about this time, I decided I will do an identity video. And that is, what is it actually like? Now, I can talk about this because it's like something that's, I don't know, very appropriate for me. What is it actually like being a mixed race comic book creator? Like, I mean, for the most part, it's probably just like being a comic book creator, but I won't deny that there are like certain, interesting idiosyncrasies about that particular thing that like come up for this particular, when you're that, there are interesting things that may pop up here and there. So what are some of those things? Well, interestingly, mixed race people are a thing that I think a lot of people they're coming to understand better, but I think it's still kind of a thing a lot of people don't really understand. And oh, you can't see exactly what I'm doing here. I was working down here. Um, and I think a lot of times when you like hear stuff like that, like, oh, people don't understand this, a lot of times it's like um, framed as like white people not understanding something, but in this particular aspect, I find that I think people in general, like white people, black people, or whatever, like have sometimes difficulty understanding certain things about this particular experience. So that's one of the things I've come across. Like for example, and I would say like I'm talking about kind of special occurrences. You know what I mean? Like most people are just fine, but every now and then you'll run into some people like I think I've encountered both white people and black people who are a little confused. As I said, mixed people could be kind of confusing to others. We're a little confused about like the characters. That's one, like, shouldn't your comic be like more black or something? Like, why don't you have an all black cast or something like that? Because they think that if you, I think the thinking typically is that like if you have a black character, then uh, you you're expected to have like a whole bunch of other black characters in your story, which is a configuration we see sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think what I want to point out is that what I try to um, establish with something like Zatswan is there's nothing wrong with that, and yeah, that happens sometimes, but that's common enough. I'm for some reason I'm thinking of something like, what is that show called, like Lovecraft Country or something like that. Um, there was just a thing that popped in my head. There is stuff like that where it's like this is a black take on horror or science fiction or something like that. Um, and so it's like, well, what's up with your thing? Like I've heard stuff like that. Like in regards to Zatswan, like you would think if uh the main character is black, then you would have more black characters around in the comic, or that there would be black characters around in the comic. So the thing that I want to point out is that this is something that I try to, or I would hope that people would understand. And as I said before, I don't want to like frame everybody as being like this. It's just something that I have seen from some people. And here's what I would say to those people if I were to respond to all of them, which I haven't always done. You shouldn't have necessarily a particular, there shouldn't be an exact rule that needs to be followed. I think that is actually quite limiting and overall not helpful. Now, some stuff might do stuff is it Lovecraft Country or is it Lovecraft County? I think it's Country. I'm just using that as an example. I've never actually seen the show. Some people might do things that way, and that's fine, but that doesn't mean everything that stars a black character has to be like a super duper black affair. Um, like with the all black cast and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. See, that's where I actually have the open mind. Like people who are doing something different than what I'm doing or how I'm doing it, I think it's perfectly fine for that to exist. There's nothing wrong with it. But there should also be room to do something completely different. I think that, and believe me, when you are doing like a black character, there are suddenly all kinds of people um, ready to and wanting to police you some kind of way. You know, like your thing isn't black enough. Like why is your love interest a white woman? Da, 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 da. You know, all this type of stuff. Like you're some kind of sellout. Believe me, I've like heard it. I've heard it all. And like if I was to respond to it, so I guess that's kind of what this sort of is, like somewhat of a response to like some of this stuff. And I think it's not necessarily to clap back. As I said, I think there are a lot of things people don't understand, and there's a lot of ignorance. And some of it, frankly, I know when we say like words like ignorance, we're putting a real negative spin on it. Some of it I think can just be legit ignorance. Like they literally don't know. There is something there that they're having trouble wrapping their heads around and not completely understanding. So, you know, I'm just going to approach it from that point. Like, this can be a teaching moment instead of like, you know, kind of a retaliation moment. So here's what I would say, just to reiterate, like, um, stuff doesn't have to go that way. Now, that might be what you're used to seeing. You might be used to seeing a Cosby Show or a Mantis. If you don't know, that's like this black superhero early 90s show that I think starred Carl Lumley, right? Like the guy who voiced Martian Manhunter in Justice League. You may have seen a Mantis. You may have seen a black sitcom like Martin or something like that, or Steve Urkel show of Family Matters, um, where it's like it's the black sitcom, it's the black show, or you may have read a Milestone comic where it's the black comic. You know, that is a way that people do things, but you do not have to do things that way. And do you know, I guess to kind of explain, because people do get confused, why things aren't that way exactly with Zats one, because you can get, if you don't do things like the way some people want you to do them, this is where people try to do some shaming, like you're just looking for white validation or you're self-hating or something like that. Like I said, believe me, uh I've heard like this stuff before. Okay, so here's like where the ignorance comes in. You don't, like, some of the people who have said that and like uh made accusations like that, they do not know me and they do not know my lived experience. So do you know why I'm not one of these people that does like, probably, I mean, I don't know if this is actually the reason why, but it probably plays into it somewhat. One of the reasons I don't do this all black cast thing or make this uber, super duper black comic book or something like that is because my lived experience was not an all black cast. Now I understand for some people that was the case. Like they're all, and like being going out in the world and meeting people and talking to people, I've come to find that, surprisingly, I know this isn't always like the case, but I have seen this, surprisingly, I find that I have personally found, at least, that people are a lot more segregated than even I thought they were, at least many cases. Like all their, core and key relationships are like white, or all their core and key relationships are black. Um, and that's not uncommon. Now, why that's, I guess, perhaps it's not. So, considering it's not uncommon, maybe it really isn't that surprising. But for me, I don't know, surprising. The words is different. For me, it was very different because that's not what, my life has been like. Um, and, I think, of course, like they may know they encounter like people of other backgrounds just being out in the world, coworkers or stuff like that. But they're just that. They're just like they have their place. They see them out in public. Maybe they know some people kind of somewhat. But as far as real close relationships, oftentimes it's just, a certain type of people, all white or all black or all, Mexican or Asian or something like that. And, people talk about, the United States being this great melting pot and all that. And yes, it is to some extent, but one thing that we do see sometimes is instead of it being an actual real melting pot, it's like all the Mexicans over here, all the black people over here, all the white people over here. And a lot of times they kind of segregate themselves. Like, by the time you might get to high school or something, I think it's not uncommon. I was never like that. Like that, and I guess that's the thing about me, like kind of what I'm saying. I was just never like that. And I know not everybody is, a lot of people aren't, but still I think a lot of times you do see this sort of thing. Um and I don't, it's not even necessarily that I think people set out to be that way all the time. In particular, it's just that that's just the way, that's just their experience, that's the way their life played out. Well, interestingly for me, that's not the way my life played out. Like everybody around me wasn't, a black person or a or like that wasn't my, that's what I was getting at. My like lived experience was not an all black cast. So probably one big reason you don't see that from me or that's probably one big reason you don't see it from me. Now, for some people, that was their lived experience, like all their core key relationships um, were black people, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just their experience, and their people like to see their experience reflected in the entertainment they indulge in. So I guess kind of what I'm saying is like, just because like Zatswan isn't like an all black cast or something like that, that doesn't mean that there's something somehow wrong with it. And you shouldn't really have to explain that to people. And I know for many perfectly reasonable people, I don't need to explain that to them. But I have seen that, and I've seen stuff like I've seen people say like they've seen pictures of Zatswan. Like I just recall a specific instance on Twitter. Save some of these detail lines. I'm just getting in like the main outline of Zatswan here with this brush. Some of these other lines for detail will come in with other inking utensils like dip pens and so on. Let's get some of this area in here. I just remember a specific incident I remember on Twitter where someone just saw Zatswan and it was they're just like not an all black cast, or I forgot how they framed it. I wish I remembered exactly. It's like either they said something like not an all black cast, or too many white people in the cast, or something like pass. And honestly, my feeling on that, perfectly legit. Like I'm not upset by that. Like if that's just not what you're looking for, then it's just not what you're looking for. It's not for you. Now that said, not everybody's like that though. If you're looking for like something like that, then yeah, you can just like keep it pushing. Like it's not what I have available. That's not to say there's anything wrong with stuff that does do that. I don't think so. Like I know it's not an all black cast, but I think it's safe to call it a black film, like Sinners, that came out recently. Like it's with Michael B. Jordan. It's fine. I watched it. I liked it. Um, Good movie. I'm happy for its success. Successful quote unquote black film. So I guess my point is that it's fine. Like my view is it's fine for that type of stuff to exist, but not everything has to follow that exact formula. I guess people kind of expect you to, and when you don't, they're like, "Huh?" But speaking on the whole mixed race issue again, uh that's kind of like, I mean, not completely story of your life. There's a lot more to it than that, but people being kind of confused by like, huh? That's like part of it, you know what I mean? uh so it's nothing new. That's kind of what I'm getting at. But yeah, I think that should explain it. If you're like expecting an all black cast from me, like my life has not been an all black cast, so it's should be no surprising that I'm just not doing that. I know for some people it has been that, and that's cool too. It's like we have different experiences, and frankly, uh, I guess when it comes to, I guess something you could call black media or whatever. Okay, so that's an interesting question. Like, does Zatswan, because it's like not the most black thing in the world, does it even have a right to be in that type of sphere? And believe me, there are all kinds of gatekeepers who want to tell you yes, no, or the other. My particular view is that it's not something I really concern myself with much or at all. Zatswan just is what Zatswan just is, and people could either take that or leave it. But at the same time, I do have like an opinion on that. Yes, I do think it should be included in that because one thing that I think is one thing that I think is like good for people to realize is that it shouldn't just be this one very expected, very stereotypical thing that's like completely homogenized, because I think I think that's detrimental to everybody. Um, I think people need to realize and accept, and I've mentioned stuff like this kind of before in other videos, particularly when people were upset about Aaron. Some people were upset about Aaron Pierre being cast as Jon Stewart because he was too light. If you remember any of that, it you know they're quote unquote black is not just like one thing, nor should it just be one thing. It's bigger than that. It doesn't always have to be just stereotypical stuff like slaves and ghettos and rap and you know uh well, let's see, what else would there be? I don't know, stuff like that. No, it shouldn't be. I think that's way too simplistic, way too stereotypical. I think Zatswan is kind of a sign that it doesn't have to be that. Um, because I'll be completely honest with you, and I'm not necessarily even speaking of myself. Um, but not everybody relates to all the same things. You know what I mean? And I think when we're talking about issues like this, things like this, a big important thing is people feeling seen. You know, uh, I think that's important, and I think that's something that kind of everybody wants, of all backgrounds, to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. You know, and there are people who, they're like, maybe they're kind of, they just don't, that doesn't, the typical stereotypical stuff that they're supposed to be into, if they're, say, black or something, they just don't connect with it. They don't relate with it. But something that's a little bit different, like Zatswan, might speak to them. Those people are out there. And again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with, per se, the more expected, um, the quote unquote more expected take on black, but I do think it is important for people to see other takes, other aspects, other experiences. We shouldn't act like um, it's just one experience that has to look just one way, because um, that's not like completely accurate. No, that's not accurate at all, really. And in doing that, there's still going to be a lot of people that are going to feel unheard, unseen, unwelcome, and alienated, you know? And that's why I don't think it's good for anybody for it to be just like that. So as far as that's why I'm being quote unquote like, um, included in stuff like that, like I guess you could say black media or something. Actually, I think it should be. It might not be the typical thing you see there, but I think it's important to have like stuff that isn't the typical. It isn't all just one thing, because that's not everybody's experience. You know what I mean? And I think that's just something that should be like recognized, that there isn't just um one particular experience. Like I said, like my lived experience wasn't an all black cast, so unsurprising, like I wasn't even really thinking about it, like when I was like creating Zatswan, like hee, I'm not gonna have an all black cast in Zatswan. I'm gonna have like something else, and I'm not. No, I wasn't thinking that. I was just doing my thing, and that's why it just comes down to the experience, like the way you see the world, the way you see yourself, the way you see other people. Um, you shouldn't expect it to be the same for everyone, even if they got like similar skin pigmentation than you. They could just be coming from a completely different place, a completely different background, and people should just be cognizant and respectful of that. I think, instead of trying to police, like, you're not doing it right, Zatswan's not black enough. That I had another video titled "Is Zatswan Black Enough" or something, and I brought up like Dwayne the Rock Johnson. Uh, so, I mean, if you're kind of interested in, like, I've touched on this topic before, but there are some things here that that I'm mentioning here that I didn't go into as much in that video, such as like the assumptions people will have of your work and how they feel, like kind of confused and weirded out, like when things don't go the way they think they should. They go against their assumptions, like um and then because they do go against the grain, or they go against what they think is like, this isn't how a black hero is supposed to be. um they they think there's something, rather than just accepting, I guess this is, I don't, maybe it's not what I'm used to seeing, but that's fine. No, they're like, there's something wrong with it. Like these types of policing type people, you know, that's how they like kind of do things. And I think that's very ignorant. You should broaden your horizons a bit and just kind of understand that they're just people who have different experiences than you. Uh, and perhaps that's just reflected in their fiction. So what are some of these like black tropes that I avoid or just don't do in Zatswan? You might be wondering, like, what is so different about Zatswan? Well, for one thing, he's not talking about his race all the time. Like I talk about that probably more in these videos because I do recognize that kind of is a thing. I mean, I mean it does come up. But as for in the actual fiction, it hasn't been a thing as of yet. So I think a lot of people are expecting, why hasn't this come up yet? Because when I read Black Lightning, and when I read Luke Cage, and when I read even Jon Stewart, and when I read Static, and I read all these other milestone characters like Hardware and Icon, it's like the first thing. It's like the first thing you encounter with them, right? Like, um, so Zatswan is very, very different because as much Zatswan as I have made, and I've made enough of it now where some people are kind of like, when is he going to, do the thing? It's like I've never done the thing. I've never talked about it. Is that intentional on my part? Kind of yeah, but kind of no. So let me explain that. The yeah part, I guess, is like, yeah, I realize that. I'm going to get more of a point on my brush. I realize that I haven't done that. And um, I currently don't have any plans to do that. But the thing about it is, like, when I think about it on a practical level, okay, so like on a matter of principle, kind of, yes, I consciously know I haven't done that. And there is a reason I haven't done that. It's because it is a conscious thing. Because all these other characters that I mentioned, them and way more than them, nearly like every black superhero, it's been like a big, big thing with them. And I'm not saying that, again, I want to reiterate some things. There's nothing like wrong with that. I'm not saying this isn't the way to do things and it needs to change. However, what I am saying is that it doesn't have to always be that. You can do it a different way. And we've already seen a lot of that other way. So I decided with Zatswan, I'm just not going to do that. Now, I do want to make something clear, and I've mentioned this in some other videos too. Um, there may come a time in the future, I don't like to limit myself, so there may come a time in the future I might feel like, you know what, we're gonna do it. We're gonna dive into this kind of Zatswan's racial background. We're gonna make it key to this particular story somehow. Yeah, that day may come, because I don't like to limit myself. All I can say is right now I have not felt the need to do that, and there's something else I want to talk about too. Um, so I said that it's a conscious thing that I haven't done that, and it is, but when I look at it at a practical level, right? Just the story at a practical level, there has literally been no room as of yet to really dive into that. I have a story I want to tell with Zatswan, and they're really, it just hasn't been part of that story I want to tell. Like, I would have to literally take time out of the story to, put that in the comic, and that's just not a good thing to do. So believe it or not, it's like there hasn't been any time for that. So it's not even like something I had to consciously dodge. That's what I'm getting at. It's just that it's that's just hasn't I haven't had time to talk about that. There have been more pressing and more important things in the story uh than, talking about Zatswan's background and how it relates to everything. So while I am consciously aware I haven't done that, I haven't yet had an opportunity to do it. There have been other things I felt were more important to get to in the story than that. Actually, what I want to do is go in here. We'll get this belt. So when you're inking like this, by the way, every now and then I like to do a little aside about what I'm doing with my artwork. Um, you you want to make sure you don't cause any big smudges. See, this ink is actually, it's quick drying, but it's still like wet. So you got to be careful you don't like put your hand down somewhere. Speaking of that, where's my glassine? Usually I rest my hand on glassine paper like this stuff. It keeps the oils and things on your hand off the actual paper. You like rest it on top of it. That's what glassine has other purposes too. But that's what I'm using it for right now. A little eyelash. Watch out for that. So, yeah, that's like, now again, I want to reiterate too, most people have been completely fine. Like they don't really, nothing's really an issue with them. They're just enjoying the story. But this is stuff I have seen and have heard here and there. I mean, not a whole lot. Like I said, most people are just talking about enjoying the story, but I like to have these discussions, and this is a thing that I can't completely ignore. But I figured, I'll talk about some of these, weird, maybe some people might think uncomfortable topics. So here's an uncomfortable topic. Speaking about some of this stuff, um, like why does Zatswan have to have this white love interest? Are you a cell like I've heard it before, like stuff like, I'm not gonna get into all the things I've heard here and there and who said them, but yeah, I've heard some of that. Um, I guess I would say there are a lot of ways I could answer that. I guess the way I'm feeling like answering it right now is, why not? Is there some kind of problem with that? And if there is, why do you feel that there is a problem with that? And I've mentioned this before too. Why do you feel the need to police him about that? Like, why can't the character, or just even the creator, just do what they want? Like, um, like, why are they being policed about that? But you know what? I know I don't have to. I don't owe anybody any kind of explanation about that. But for the sake of discussion, and I guess the sake of understanding, you have to factor in a couple things. What is the person who made it? What is their background? What is their life experience? You know what I mean? You don't know, and that can like play a role in things. Like, are they, if something like that just resembles their life experience because that's the way their life played out, are you still gonna label them some kind of sellout, self-hater, whatever? Not. I think that's a very ignorant thing to do, you know. And it's like not a productive thing to do. Like, people don't know my life experience. They don't know like what my life has look like, who the people in my life have been, or what they've looked like. I think that like, and I don't even feel like going into all the like, sometimes I might go into some personal aspects, but I have to kind of feel like doing that. Like, I remember saying before that, oh, there's a finger here that I didn't pencil in. I remember saying before that in another video, um, hold on, I gotta look at my sketch for something. Let me pause because I don't want to have a bunch of dead air time. So let me pause and take a look at my. Okay, I'm back. I pulled up my sketch. So there are couple little things I'm gonna want to pencil in because when I was transferring this art to my let's see, to the watercolor paper I'm working on here, there's just some stuff I didn't like pencil in that great, and I guess we just want stuff like that, just a couple lines. Okay, so let's see, maybe 1, 2, 3, yeah, that's fine. Okay, yeah, I think that's something that people should consider. Like, you don't know this person's background, you don't know the person who made it, and just because, even if they are a black or a mixed person or something like that, that doesn't mean that their life had to look a certain way. Like I said, I know I don't owe anybody any explanations for anything, but I guess just for the sake of talking some, I can give you like some. I don't like, why is Alakazona the way Alakazona is. Let's go way, 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 way back, okay? Um, and see if we can figure this out, just for the sake of this being interesting. Let's see if we can. So, interestingly, I so let's consider me. Believe it or not, I did not grow up in an inner city environment. You know, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. Doing that, there's nothing wrong with not doing it. It's just an experience, you know. And my experience was just growing up what my experience was. I didn't have a lot of say in that. It's just the way that things played out for me, you know, as it is for other people. Interestingly, I came from just the opposite of that, I would say. Um, Orange County, California beach cities, you know, which the population was probably like literally like 90% white or something like that. So here's what I experienced there. I my first experience that I can really recall where I was kind of more out in the world, you know, like away from my family somewhat. And I know I make that sound dramatic, but was like first grade. I did not go. I don't know why. Like, I think I'm pretty sure my siblings did, but I did not attend kindergarten. I like started school. I'm gonna want to clean this up a bit. In the first grade. So let me explain to you what I'm gonna have to like set my brush down for a minute just to like explain this. Okay, I'll take this rolling ruler here. So this is what my first grade class was like, right? There were various rows. Like, this is the first row. The seats were just like ba 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 ba. Then behind that there was a second row, ba 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 ba. Just a long row of desks, and then they were just built up in rows. This is how I remember the first grade class being. So I was, believe it or not, like top center. Like, I was in the first row, kind of in the center, and I'm like right here. And this is, again, like, let me clean my brush. I don't want to leave too much. Uh, I don't want to leave too much ink in it while I talk. Okay, so I'm like top center, right? Sitting next to me over here, let's say on my left, there's a girl. Let's not completely reveal everything. We'll call her C. Her name started with the C. She was blonde haired and blue eyed, right? And she was, I hesitate to say she was mean, but she would like tease me. Again, she's like 6, you know what I mean? And then there's me here. She wasn't like malicious, but she could be a little teasy and a little rough with me, kind of. And again, this is like my first time kind of being out there away from my family that I could recall, like for extended periods of time on a regular basis, like first grade. So here's C sitting here. Here's me. Over on my right side, there's a girl here. Her name, we'll call her M. Her name started with M. So Neil, C, M. She was very, very nice to me, didn't tease me, always very kind and like just very kind. She was a blonde haired, blue eyed girl. So here's Neil, here's C, and here's M. That's what I was like first. I mean, of course, it's not my first time ever seeing any people. You know what I mean? But, this is first grade. And this is what I was dealing with here. If I was most of my time spent in class was if we weren't just doing school, if I was visiting with some kind of neighbor, typically it was going to be C or it was going to be M. So let's go back. Let's go to second grade. Here was my experience. First, these tables were named after the continents. Like I said at South America, there was another Asia table. I don't remember. I don't know what that was like. I don't remember. All I remember is I said at South America, and South America was one of the smaller tables, just a square table, or the desks were arranged in a square formation, and there was only 4 of us. So there was me here. So Neil is here. Then sitting to the left of Neil is a girl named Julian. Julian, but everyone at South America was nice. She wasn't mean, she wasn't bad, but like the most teasy person to me was C, the girl in first grade so far. Julian said, oh darn, I said her name. Jay, cat's out of the bag. Jay sat here, right? Blonde haired, blue eyed girl sat here. Across from me, but actually was a boy. His name is B. A blonde haired, blue eyed boy. And diagonal from me was another blonde haired, blue eyed girl named S. So blonde hair, blue eyed person here, blonde hair, blue eyed person here, blonde hair, blue eyed person here, me sitting here. And, at some point actually in the, let me get back to inking. At some point actually in the course of the class, not right away, believe it or not, like we were well into the year. The, somebody, I can't remember who it was, one of them actually remarked, you know what? We're all blonde hair. We all have blonde hair and blue eyes here. Everyone except for Neil. And you know what these are like kids at this time at second grade, so they're like 7 or something. You know what the remark there was? Are we done with the brush? We might be done with the brush. I might want to bring out a dip pen. Let's get a couple more core lines in with the brush. So this is a long anecdote, but I hope it like makes people I hope it could help some people who just can't wrap their heads around things. I hope it could make them understand things a little better. No, not everybody in the school, by the way, was blonde and blue-eyed, but interestingly, that's how it played out for me in some of my most formative years. But what I was, oh yeah, so the remark was just like, oh yeah, huh? Like, and I was just like, I don't know, I was just a little kid, didn't feel anything behind it. We were just like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Like, wow. And that was that. That was the only time that I could recall that ever coming up or anything. And okay, so does that have anything to do with Allecka here? I mean, most people would probably say probably. And why I bring this all out and stuff is because you do not know people's life experiences. You don't know what people look like in their lives, what they experience in their lives. You may have a bunch of assumptions because you think things have to go a certain way. But and again, I realize that I don't need to like explain this or answer for anything. I'm just kind of doing it just because I feel like doing it. um, is there anything behind it? Yeah, probably. Most people would probably say, yeah, um, that probably made a difference somehow in you. Um, Now I do want to say though too, as far as the whole, I guess you can say kind of more stereotypical regular. It wasn't just my life wasn't just all white all the time. It wasn't just a sea of blonde-haired, blue-eyed people all the time. No, and that's kind of like for me this is just normal, but maybe this is sort of the like for me it's just normal, but maybe this is sort of like the magical thing about, being a mixed person. No, there was your more kind of typical regular black stuff in there too, like we would. I didn't grow up in, like I said, I grew up in like beach cities, but we would go to more of the stereotypical black neighborhood because I have family there. Uh, and as for, I'm not going to give all the details, like where was that? Well, um, okay, let's get in like, well, how could I frame this for you? Okay, I'll frame it for you like this. It wasn't a bad neighborhood. It was like just people, regular people doing their things and like so when we would go to the quote unquote black neighborhood, to me I just the way I kind of perceived it is, oh, the houses aren't as big. That was kind of the thing that kind of got my little kid brain. That's like what my little kid brain latched onto. When we would go like visit family members and stuff. And where was this? Like I'm not going to give all the details, but we'll say like Compton is like, let's see, Compton, if there's not like heavy traffic or anything, you can get there in like 15 minutes, I guess. A 15-minute drive. If there is like heavier traffic, maybe about 20, 24, 25, something like that. And of course, in this area, there can be like a lot of traffic sometimes, but Compton's maybe about only like 8 miles or something. It's not far away, so that kind of gives you a idea. It's just like Compton. That's a song. That's literally how it goes. It just kind of got me thinking of that for some reason. Just like Compton. Look it up sometime if you're curious. Okay, so it's not like, and we would, the typical thing would be there was some quote unquote, stereotypical black stuff, I guess, like that would be going on. Like, I mean, I didn't think, I still don't really think anything of it, just kind of way life was. People listening to Sam Cooke and Marvin Gaye and Whitney Houston and, yeah, we would like eat, um, during certain times of year, of course, probably more than others, eat like your typical green beans and fried chicken and cornbread. I didn't think anything of I didn't think anything of it. It just kind of was what things were, So what I guess what I'm pointing out is it's like it's not like it was none of that. Yeah, that was there. It just wasn't all that. It just wasn't only that for me. That wasn't like just the only thing I was experiencing. I was also experiencing C and M over here and that stuff. So, yeah, but yeah, we would do your typical thing. Like we were, of course, down. In that area, you got people being Laker fans, so we were, uh, into basketball and stuff. And I have older relatives that were really into basketball, like James Worthy. And, you know, it's so funny. Actually, this character here, his name is AC Cooper. So get this, there is a Laker named Michael Cooper, and there is another Laker power forward named AC Green. So he is AC Cooper. Get it? So I mean, uh, no, not entirely a coincidence, I wouldn't say. Um, But yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is, you don't know people's experiences. So why are things the way they are? Well, that's just, and I mentioned before that we're getting kind of into some personal stuff. I mentioned before that I actually had a girlfriend who was from Denmark, Danish. Um, And okay, I think we might want to come in with the dip pin. So people like write what they know. They write what they're, and if you don't know, you should. Denmark is like a Scandinavian country. People write what they know. You don't know what their life experiences have been. Okay, I think we're gonna come in with the dip pin and clean the brush off. Are there any more big core lines I want to get? Maybe down here some. So you shouldn't just assume all kinds of like this isn't the way it's supposed to be. Okay, so what I'm gonna say about that, and that doesn't mean here's where it gets to be a little ignorant to me. Like this isn't black enough. This isn't, just because you might have experiences that are more than just, you know, just like Compton. It doesn't mean that you're not black, less black. And I guess that's kind of how I feel about Zatswan, like it's just it reflects other experiences. I'm not saying that stuff. There's not I'm not there's nothing better or worse of any of that. It's just like different experiences people have, and I think that quote unquote black stuff, if you want to call it that, shouldn't just be relegated to one type of experience. I think that's kind of let's bring in, I'm going to bring in this dip pin here to get some of these lines. It shouldn't be regular. Let me get, so I have been dipping into this little thing here. Uh, I think for the dip pin, it doesn't go deep enough. I would need to fill it with more ink. So I'm going to dip right into my pot instead of putting it into this because it's a deeper well. And with a dip pin, I want to dip a little deeper. So we're going to go into the Higgins Black Magic. Um, but I guess that's getting back to the core point. That's like one of the things that you, okay, I guess if you're like a mixed creator, you might run into. I guess that's why I asked, what is it like? People being confused by you. I guess they're thinking like you got to be one thing or another. It's got to be a certain way or something like that. Like if your character is black, he needs to be like more black. Your character isn't black enough or something like that. Um, Not surprising that there might be some people who think that way. I think it's very ignorant, very limiting, and not true. And I think that if there's anything that I would want people to take away, it's, consider that. Like, consider, how can I put it? Respecting other people's experiences more. You know what I mean? And respecting that not everything has to mirror your experiences, and that doesn't make it inauthentic some kind of way. Uh, I guess that's kind of the big takeaway here. Okay, and let's get in a couple more of these lines. And yeah, I shared quite a bit of stuff, not that I really mind, but that probably does explain some things. Uh, Now, of course, consciously at the time when you're a little kid and stuff, you're not thinking about all this. What can I say? Maybe conditioning. I mean, I kind of say conditioning, but it kind of makes it sound like something was kind of done to me intentionally. It was nobody. There was no like grand conspiracy to sit me next to C and M and all those kids at the South America table. That's literally just the way things shaked out. But yeah, at the time I wasn't thinking anything of it, but did it have some overall, like, especially on a formative brain, like mine at the time, especially when these are like some of the earliest people that I'm like, I guess you can kind of say bonding with. I'm seeing them, 5 days a week, all day nearly, sitting next to them. Um, some of the first people I'm bonding with outside of a familial relationship. I mean, I'm sure I can't. Yeah, I know I had some like kids or friends that were little kids like before that, but you know, I actually do distinctly remember like a couple of them. But yeah, I think that like made some kind of a difference. So like when you want to get into something like why is she the way is, well, you gotta like dive deep into a person's whole experience and whole psyche and all that stuff, because all that stuff is probably going to inform in some way the stuff that they make, because it's going to inform how they see the world and the other experiences they've had and stuff like that. Um, and I can't even consciously say like, yeah, the thing is like I can't consciously say like it wasn't like, man, when I saw C, when I saw that girl sitting to the next to me, that mean, no, she wasn't. I hesitate to say mean that. And when she teased me that time, I just knew I had to like create a blonde princess in Zatswan. It was, my path was already set. No, you're not thinking stuff like that. You're not thinking anything at the time, but at the same time, I'm not going to be so naive to say, oh, that probably didn't do anything. So this was kind of an interesting discussion, but I hope it's enlightening for people. Like, I guess the thing to come away with is that you don't know everybody's experiences, and I think people intellectually understand that, but sometimes they don't like internalize it enough, and they still like expect stuff to be like generic or easily explained or to fit into like a clean little box, and when it doesn't, they get confused or feel uncomfortable or something like that. Okay, so that's one your hand here. You want it to go like that. This is Allecka's hand down here. They're kind of entwined a bit. Oh, okay, no, this is your hand here. I'm getting confused. Like that's her hand there. Okay, that's what we want it to look like. And I see we're getting a little pool of ink, so we have to be careful about that because I don't want it to get out of control. But I appreciate you joining me on this. I hope it's interesting, you know, listening to me ramble about kids I used to sit next to. That's the point though. Like, man, why are things the way things are? You just don't know these people's history and what they've gone through and the people they've had in their life and how their life has played out. So that doesn't mean they're selling out or they're like inauthentic. You just don't know, and everything does not have to resemble your experiences for something to be authentic. That is the ignorance that I'm opposed to, actually. uh, and here's a sad thing. Ignorant black people, they're definitely out there. I mean, certainly not everybody, but it's something you encounter. And one thing I hope I can kind of combat, I guess, is that type of ignorance. Like, you don't think that everything has to play out a certain way and something's like off or inauthentic if it just doesn't look a way you might expect it to. And you might, I know it's kind of hard not to have, that glides nicely. I know it's hard not to have expectations and stuff sometimes, but you might not want to assume too many things because you never know, like where people are coming through or what they've gone through or what their life experience has been. And as I mentioned before, sometimes it doesn't have to do with any kind of self-hating or selling out. It's just their experience, you know. Okay. And I guess one of the things I'm thinking of, like I could give you an example. Neil Allen says that a black man must be with a white woman. You know, this is a funny thing to say. Like people can say, I never said that. Just I never said that. That's just something I remember being accused of. And no, just to set the record straight, and I've said this before, a black man should be with whoever a black man wants to be with, so long as that other person will have that black man. Those are Neil Allen's official thoughts. So there's nothing left up to confusion or nothing left up to confusion or misinterpretation. I just kind of spelled it out for you so you know exactly how Neil Allen thinks. Some of these lines I might want to clean up a little bit. Might want to come in with a isograph, a technical drawing pen, and do that. If you watched my previous video, I'll probably post it. You saw me ink up my technical drawing pens. They're still inked up. Um, let's get in this. Okay, so what else does Zatswan not do? We talked about the why isn't the cast all black? Why is the love interest white? What's another things that why doesn't he talk about race all the time? Yeah, these are the things that I think some people may expect from like these types of characters that Zatswan kind of doesn't, you know, adhere to. And what are some others that I could think of? Well, let me think some other black character tropes. His story's not about like um some kind of hardship in the sense of being a minority. I haven't done that. So yeah, you see a lot of stories like that. Like it's, I think the here, you want to know something weird about me? I've seen so many stories like that, that it's like so many superhero stories like that, to me it's kind of tired. And if other people want to do it, fine. I'm not saying there's anything like inherently wrong or bad about it, but like, hey, plenty of people got these bases covered, and I'm kind of tired of seeing the same thing over and over again. But you know, there's a weird, I don't know if I want to call it a contradiction with me, but there is something a little interesting. So in this realm of comics, I was like, you know what, I've seen too much of this kind of this type of thing with these hardships. And you know, in regards to like being black with these heroes, I am not gonna do that because I've just seen it so much. But you know what, there's something interesting about me. It's like, you know what, I'm thinking, i've had a weird I've had a weird interest, kind of. I don't know if I want to call it weird, but making an indie video game where you're actually feel a sneeze coming on. Hold on. Okay, making an indie video game where you're actually playing as a black slave, um, and like, no, of course the character would be in a strong, empowered role and everything like that. I wouldn't like make it anything like demeaning, But yeah, the background is like your character is like a black slave. And you know, one of the reasons why I've kind of thought about that, that might seem to go against like some of the stuff I'm talking about, maybe on the surface, like, oh no, not more of this stuff. Because in video games, it's like I've almost never seen it. I've seen it two times I could think of. One is a game that never came out in America, and one is some other game, and I don't remember the name of either of them. Um, they're both kind of retro. And it's like I haven't seen much of that. It's like, so I'm kind of thinking, why can we get all these slave stories in film and literature and nearly everything else, but in video games it's like never, 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 never done. So I guess the thing with me is like, if I see if I see too much of a certain thing in a form of media, I might not want to do it. But if I see if I see it never done, then I'll be interested in like doing that. Um, I would have liked to call the game honestly Power Slave, but there's another game I think on the Sega Saturn called that. I think it's also like I think it's a, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a Judas Priest album. But I think that would be such a cool name, Power Slave. um, so I guess the thing is like I'm not necessarily against those types of stories, like these, I guess you can say like black stories, per se. I think what I may be like not against them, just like man, I've seen a lot of that stuff in superhero comics. Like all the black heroes tend to have some kind of origin or like key feature about them in particular that like goes back to being black, usually in some kind of disenfranchised way. Just seen a lot of that with superheroes, but you know what? I haven't seen a lot of that in video games. At least not with slavery in particular. So it's like, wouldn't that be interesting? Like, so yeah, I guess with superheroes in particular, it's just kind of tired. Um, like we should be able to have um tired to the point where it's like we should be able to have something where it's not just that. Now, if there were a bunch of just slave video games, I would get tired of that too. Cause it's like, man, can we please have something else where you're not a freaking slave, you know? But because there is like next to none of that, I'm not like opposed to actually seeing it. Interestingly enough, I guess that's just the way my brain works. Um, it's like you get it in everything else, like all these movies and stuff. Like there's never any in any games. Um, I guess there are a lot of ways that can go wrong, but I think by default it doesn't necessarily have to like. Um, it doesn't necessarily have to be like something that's way offensive, is what I'm saying. If you handle it like well, otherwise, if that's the case, none of these movies should have been coming out. And even if it is offensive, it's like the movies sometimes don't care about being offensive. They're just gonna do it. Uh, okay, so we're getting into Zatswan. I want to get in this hairline because he looks kind of weird without it. Let me dip again. Okay. And okay, so some other things that yeah, he doesn't really talk about, Zatswan doesn't really talk about you know, black disin let's see if I can get this right. Disin disin no, I don't even know if that's a word. Or if it is a word, I can't really, I'm blanking out on black disenfranchisement. Wow. Uh um no, Zatswan doesn't go into that. It's because I guess one big reason is because so many other characters do that, and again, I don't have any time for that. I just like even if I wanted to, I'm that apparently just isn't the story that I'm like here telling. And believe me, let's come in here with a finer nib. I'll probably come in here with technical drawing pins to get like details on the face. Believe me, like you might go in thinking like you'll have time to do this and time to do that, but when it really comes down to it, and you're really like doing the story, you're scripting and like doing the art and all that stuff, and you find out, at least I find out that quite a bit of stuff, hits the cutting room floor. Like there wasn't an opportunity to do this, and I wanted to do this, but I couldn't do that. Um, and so while it sounds like I would just be able to, oh well, he could really do that if he wanted. No, I would really have to like make time. I'd have to. It would be awkward at this point in the story to like go into that type of stuff all of a sudden. Uh, There is some stuff I've snuck in though. Like I can tell you exactly where it is. Maybe I'll have a screenshot up of it. In Zatswan Multiversal Guardian Chapter 5, page 3, I do have Allecka rubbing on AC Cooper's hair here. And the reason for it is because she's a little like confused about his hair texture. Um, so she's doing the thing where she's just rubbing on his head while he's asleep, so it's like he doesn't even know what's going on. She's using the opportunity to, yeah, no, that's not something she should necessarily be doing. I don't necessarily condone it, but still, it is something I put in the comic. Um, I guess that's a bit of an aside I can talk about. I mean, it's weird stuff we're talking about, but I guess when you have stuff that I found, like the Danish girlfriend, and remember, people write what they know. Um, oh, gee, what do I say about this? Yes, these people get like, I guess another thing too, because they're girls and like hair is like a thing, like for them, really important. Let's go down to Zatswan's body. They, in my experience, yeah, have made a thing about like you look at like your hair is like so curly and and doing stuff to it and trying to figure it out. Basically, I don't know. I guess they. Uh, I guess I'll just say like, yeah, that is a thing. So it went in the comic because that's what they do. They don't just. It's not been my experience that these girls just kind of don't make some kind of thing out of that. They do. And I'm not saying it's like malicious. They're just curious, I guess. Um, I guess that you kind of got me at this like. Well, I'll be completely honest. It's not. I mean, no, it's not always like. Sometimes it could be a little uncomfortable because it's, I guess, like kind of othering. You know, like making you feel kind of like a unicorn, like or like a zoo animal. Like, ooh, look what it does when I do this, sproing. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. But I know that they don't really mean anything by it, so it's like whatevs. Uh, okay, we bounced around and talked about all kinds of crazy stuff here today, but we're getting into Satswan though. Let me pause real quick. Okay, back. So let's continue. I think I'm gonna keep you with me if you'll have me, while I ink in this entire Zatswan figure. So let's continue. You know what? We should probably let's stick with the face. Let's get that in. And I think here's where I'm going to bring in the rotating isographs. Let's start with the 0.35 here. So a related topic, and I don't know how long that we will go on, with this topic. This is kind of a big topic. I might save it for another video. Maybe this could be a whole other video. But I'll start it here, I guess, because I honestly don't know how much I have to say about this. So we're talking about, these black superheroes and stuff. What about the question? I've seen the question asked before. Do black people even, like, read comics? Like, I think we know they do, but do they read them in appreciable amounts? And, I've seen some people suggest no, they don't. Now, I'll be open with you. A person that comes to mind saying that is this black creator, Coffee Comics. And I don't really follow him. I've seen, like, some of his videos, like, let's make his eyes a little brighter. A little bigger. No, it looks a little better. I've seen some of his videos from here and there, but I've never really followed them. And, like, I wouldn't say I'm a fan or anything. Or I'm just kind of just like like neutral. But I remember some of the stuff that he said before, which is that, like, okay, so what I recall from this is, like, it was during some of that Sean James stuff, and he was, like, saying some of the things Sean James went wrong with. And one of the things he was saying was appealing to black people was a mistake. And because he would put forward the idea that black people do not read. They do not read comics. Now, so that's an interesting question. There are a couple things to consider here. Even if that's true, and I'm certainly not saying it is true, an interesting thing to consider is why would that be the case? It's kind of a chicken and an egg thing. Okay, acting on the assumption that is true, and that I'm not saying that it is. Let's just, for the sake of, a thought experiment, perhaps. I don't feel like I'm at a good angle here. Let's just go with that. So would they not read comics because like, these publishing companies have never ever really seriously catered to them? Or, would catering to them, and publishing in general has never really catered to, like, black people, whether it's trade publishing, comics, or whatever. Would it be because the stuff has never really, I do want to get the rest of that mouth in, but since my tip pin's loaded up, let's get some of this shading. Would it be because the stuff never catered to them, or it would be catering to them just be like a lost cause? Like, they just wouldn't read it anyway because they just don't read. That's the assumption. The answer, like, I guess what I would put forward is, I'm not out here polling people. I'm really not. So I don't think I have all the answers to that, but I honestly don't sweat that much. I just, like, put out stuff, and there it is for people who want to read it. I think that if your stuff is good enough, and if you're good enough at getting it out there in front of the right people, then you can find an audience for it. So one of the things you'll run into, like, especially in indie scene, is, like, a lot of frustrated people. So if, like, things don't go a way that they think they should go. I talked about this somewhat at that comic creator who in the Do Comics Need to Be Colored video. Let's load this up with ink. I want to get this hatching in good. People are often looking for the reasons why. Like, why didn't this go the way I thought it should have gone? Like, I didn't get the readers I thought I should have gotten. Like, what went wrong? And I guess, like, if you're doing something like with black characters, one of the things you can naturally, some people might naturally come to the thought of is like, well, you know, black people, it didn't, my thing didn't work, so nobody cares about black heroes. Black people just do not read comics, and the end. You know, there's the reason. Because I think when things don't go the way we want them to, a lot of times we might look for the reasons why. And I said something like this, and I want to come back up to that mouth of the technical drawing pen. I haven't forgotten about you, but my dip pen still has ink loaded on it, and I don't want to not use it or let it, certainly not let it dry on there. This is a really good pen too. I really like this nib. This is red feather with a steel tip nib. So not an actual like bird nib. I do have some other feathers though that are actually that if you watch my inking videos you've likely seen. Okay, so to differentiate this from that, we are going to come in here with a full black. Let's do that now, actually, just so we have it in. So is it that they just don't read at all and they just never would read, or is it because the stuff doesn't appeal to them? You know, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I mean, I don't know. I actually don't know, and I don't know that black people don't read comics in appreciable numbers. Like, I'm not convinced of that. I think there is an audience there. I think there's a very hungry audience there, though, myself, because I just see a lot of stuff anecdotally of people not being, you know, satisfied with these types of characters. So I do think there is an audience there for them. I think I've mentioned stuff like this before too, recently, that people can be very wary of investing into characters like this because, you know, so often with characters like this, you try to get into them, you end up getting burned some kind of way, you know? So I think one thing that you have to do is really prove yourself. Like, make people feel secure that your thing, your character is like worth investing in, you know, because they don't want to invest in something that's just going to end up burning or disappointing them somehow. And sometimes, you know, one way that you do kind of prove that you're worth investing in, one thing that at least helps a lot is showing up consistently. Not just disappearing, not just going away, but, you know, showing up over and over again. Honestly, that's how a lot of these superheroes, you know, have gotten as popular as they are. They just showed up and showed up and showed up consistently over a period of time, and over that the character gets a body of work, you know. And sometimes, you know what I've actually found with stuff like this? Like, it kind of goes without saying, and you kind of already know this, but there's like a difference, I think, in like really like knowing it, like I was talking about before, like knowing something intellectually. Let's actually get a darker under Allecka's chin here while I have this brush loaded up. There's a difference between like understanding, like knowing something intellectually, and then fully understanding it just through experience and seeing it. So what I have found in endeavors like this is that you might do some like marketing and you might think it doesn't pay off for you. It doesn't like get you anywhere. Like you don't get anywhere like from it. Like and you're like, I guess that just didn't work. But what you might see is like you might not see the real fruits of that particular marketing you did until months and months or maybe even like a year later. Then you're like saying, oh, that stuff that I did way back then is actually like it having an effect because it just takes time sometimes. And I think that, with um, creators, like in spaces like these, they do things, they either do marketing or they put out a book or something, and they don't get they don't get the like traction on them that they want at the time frame in which they want. And then it's like they're getting frustrated and looking for like something to be wrong. I guess what I'm getting at is like sometimes nothing actually went wrong. Sometimes like say you put out a book and maybe it doesn't get explosive sales, right? But say you continue with this project, you put out another book and another book. And eventually, from showing up consistently, people start to see you more and they start to get into your comic more. And now that you have all this content built up because you kept putting out these books, it's easier for people to kind of lose themselves in the world that you've been building and they eventually become fans. So, those books you may have put out 1, 2 years prior, you might think maybe, oh, that didn't go well. But you have to be willing to play a long game here, is what I'm getting at. Um, because it might go well for you. It might just sometimes stuff just takes time. Okay. Sometimes the efforts you make don't pay off like right away. And I've actually seen that, working on Zatswan. Let's get in this. All right, this character is coming together, and we can keep going. I think I had something hit the floor, and it might have been an isograph. Let me see. Okay, it was an isograph pin, but it was just carpet, so I mean, it's not like anything happened. So I guess what I'm saying is that some of that stuff is just like the voice of frustration and trying to like find reasons for why something didn't like work the way somebody wanted to. Oh, black people just don't read. Uh, I mean, no, I don't. Like if you ask me, that's not really the case. Some don't, some do. You want the people who do. And there's another thing too. With Zatswan at least, the aim isn't to just appeal, it's to appeal to whoever appreciates it, you know? And I know it does appeal to a number of different types of people, and that's great. Like that was the idea. I didn't want Zatswan to just appeal to one particular type of person. Uh, that was never like the aim of it, but of course I appreciate whoever ends up liking it. Um, okay. We're getting in this character some, getting in some of the detail. We've done a lot of work on the upper body of him. Still a couple, like I said, there's still a lot of detail to put in, but I know I've held you here for a while now. Why don't we, I'll get this in with the isograph. 0.3. 5. Okay. And then I'm going to get in this Z. And maybe we'll call this a ramble. So to get in this Z, we're actually going to need to use yellow ink because that Z is glowy. So let's pull out our Dr. P.H. Martin's Bombay India ink and get the dip pen for that. And again, I appreciate having you along for these art sessions. They're a lot of fun, and as I mentioned before, they kind of make the process more interesting. Okay. This is Zatswan's chest emblem logo. I'm very proud of this logo I've made for him, actually. I think it's really awesome looking. And it speaks to his particular power, like it's a square within a square. And Zatswan gets his power from a tesseract. You could also see the square motif going on down here too. That's actually where his tesseract is, and the core in his belt. Okay, get in. Okay, and clean the brush, get more ink. I'm sorry, clean the pen. Yeah, but be sure to let me know what you think about some of these topics that we talked about. Like, I explained why Zatswan is the way it is. And yeah, when you're like doing these black characters for some reason, and like I do want to reiterate, most people have been very cool, and I really appreciate that. They've just been cool and enjoying the stories. Every now and then you hear like some, I don't get why it's like this. I think he's doing it just because he doesn't want his hero to be thought of as a black thing, you know. I mean, no, that's not. I didn't really consider that. I think, you know, I just made something that came from a person, came from me. I made a thing that would come from only me, probably. Like you wouldn't get Zatswan from anybody else but me. And what makes me a lot of stuff, a lot of experiences. I explained some of them. That explains only what some aspects of why some aspects of Zatswan are the way they are, why they likely are. I don't know, a lot of this stuff, like I said, some of it's subconscious. Even though I'm the one who made it, that's kind of an assumption. I told you that whole first grade story. It's like, that's a theory, you know. It's a one that makes a lot of sense. To explain like why some things are the way they are, but that's in my subconscious mind, you know. Um, so those are parts that even I'm not fully like uh, completely cognizant of in the same way I am stuff um, in my conscious mind. Well, you know, I kind of think somebody in the comments might know there's a difference between the subconscious mind and the unconscious mind. And I can't fully, like, I have known this. I think I do know the differences, but I forget which one is which. So I'll just kind of say that's my subconscious mind. I'll say that, although it can be the other one. Okay, let's get in this. But yeah, there are a lot of people out to police you, I found. Like I said, most people have been cool, but there have been some people, I think that's maybe a better way to say it, that are out to police you. Like, you're not making it the way I want it to be made. Why are you not doing it? Is it because you're some kind of a sellout or something like that? And that doesn't really get to me. Um, I don't really mind, honestly. Like, I do think it's ignorant, but if people want to roll that way, it's like, whatevs, you know? Like, I can't be keeping myself up at night thinking about that. But it does make an interesting topic to discuss, so I thought I would go into it here today, like why Zatswan, why some of the things in Zatswan are the way that they are. Let's get in this yellow part, and then I think we'll call it a session. Don't want to keep you here forever. I got some debris up on the nib, but it fell off. Okay, this is Zatswan's. This is the belt where the tesseract sits. So I guess that's the real takeaway. Try to be understanding and respectful to other people's experiences, and don't go in with assumptions that their life experiences have to like look like yours, because there's a very good chance they don't at all, and that doesn't. Their experiences are just as valid as yours are too. Yours aren't somehow more authentic or whatever, you know, and theirs are, aren't somehow more authentic or whatever than yours. They're just, you know, the experiences that we lived and live. All right, everybody, I think I got that in. I mean, there's another. This should be yellow too, so I may as well get that. But I think that's the big takeaway of the video. At least I hope it is for people. Still have more Zatswan here to ink in. Having a lot of fun. Inking is a really relaxing. This is the whole process is like cool and relaxing actually. All right, let's clean this off and we'll call it a day. Be sure to let me know what you think in the comment section. Thanks for hanging out. Be sure to like and subscribe. That helps this channel out a ton. Let's zoom out a bit and see what we have. Wow, I'm zoomed out all the way. Really? Didn't know that. Okay, well, here's what we have. AC Cooper, Zatswan, and Allecka. Be sure to stay on the lookout for more content because there will be a lot more on the way. And pick up Zatswan Multiversal Guardian if this stuff looks cool to you. And I will talk to you again very soon. And until then, take care.